They can't help it. It's who they are. They crave control while they drain your power. So how can this be stopped? Understanding this is critical and recognizing the patterns of narcissistic abuse that can help you regain your power and put you on a path for healing. That's today's topic on Your Story Matters.
Welcome to the Your Story Matters podcast with Branon Dempsey. Your Story Matters is dedicated to help survivors of abuse grow in their healing and recovery from trauma. While we may not be able to change our beginning, we do have the power to change the ending. We hope that you'll be inspired by today's message because you matter. Your healing matters because your story matters. Here's Branon.
Hey friends, welcome back. I'm Branon Dempsey. This is the place where we dive deep into healing from narcissism, trauma, and abuse. And I feel like it's very important for us to reclaim our voice. Why? Because as the title of this podcast says, your story matters. So today in this episode, we're going to be exploring key aspects of the narcissist behavior and their relentless craving for control and the constant drive for superiority. So let's get into it. Now, I made this post initially on Threads just a few days ago, and the topic just went berserk. People were commenting left and right, sharing it. So if you're watching us as a result from following us on Threads or seeing it on Threads, thank you so much. And I ask for all of you, if you're watching by YouTube, Instagram, or wherever, please hit the subscribe button to subscribe to this podcast, and you'll get every episode when it drops. So here we go. Control is at the core of narcissistic behavior. Now, to a narcissist, control isn't just a desire, it's an obsession. They don't feel safe, secure, or worthy unless they are in complete control of their surroundings, their relationships, and even how others perceive them. So the question is, where does it come from? Now, in most cases, narcissists have deeply rooted insecurities, often stemming from early childhood experiences of neglect or overindulgence. This emotional void manifests as a need to control everything around them. You may ask, why do they have a constant pursuit for superiority? Well, let's dissect it. Narcissists thrive on feeling better than others. They craft an identity based on being superior, more intelligent, and more accomplished. But beneath that facade of confidence, there is a fragile ego going on, and they can't help feeling the less than adequate than anyone else. Their need for superiority is actually a defense mechanism. So a way to keep their insecurities hidden from the world. They cover it up by what? Image, by maybe their career, a power that they may have or position in the community, wherever it may be. So let me ask you a question. How does this show up in your interactions with a narcissist? Let me just tell you, you may not even recognize it till late in the game because it's very subtle at first. They may start criticizing you, making backhanded compliments or love bombing. It can go the other way, or dismissing your opinions. And they want to chip away at your confidence because it feels good to them. It feeds on their their sense of control. The more you doubt yourself, the more power they feel, and that they have that manipulation and control over you. Have you ever had an experience where a narcissist made you feel small or insignificant? That's an easy answer for me. Yes. So that was their need for control and action. Don't you see it? They disguise it as superiority of being tall and looking proud, looking down on others. So here's what happens. Narcissists will use gaslighting to control your perception of that reality, of the reality in that relationship. And they'll twist the truth, denying things that they've said, or even shift blame on you. This tactic is not new, but it's just about winning an argument. And it's about keeping you off balance, keeping score, one-upping you, doubting yourself, and ultimately keeping you under their control. So the more confused and uncertain you feel, it makes it easier for the narcissist to maintain that superiority. So it's just very cyclic. But here's something critical for you to remember, even when it's hard in the moment. You got to understand their superiority is frankly an illusion. It's a mask for their deep-seated insecurities. They project an image of confidence and authority, but in reality, they need constant validation. They need people to tell them how good they are so that they can feel like they're doing the job, right? That they feel secure in what they're doing. They can't handle criticism. They can't handle rejection or any threat to their ego. Now, that's why they surround themselves with people who are yes men or yes women, because they can control those people who boost their ego consciously or even unconsciously. It's crafty. It's clever in what they do. And half the time, a narcissist won't even realize what they're doing because it's just innate. They've been this way for years and years growing up, again, since childhood. But here's the truth. A narcissist's power is only as strong as the power that you give them. It's only as strong as the control that they have over you. The more you give into their need for control, the more power they suck up and that superiority that they feel. But once you recognize this dynamic and reclaim your personal boundaries, their power begins to crumble. And they may react with rage, so be careful. They may manipulate. They may try to regain control by bullying you, but stay grounded in your truth. And you can take away that hold on you. But you do have to be careful of the relationships that you may have, because some people are complete whack jobs. And if that's the case, you want to disengage. But if it's something that you can establish boundaries and have an adult conversation, then you know that you can have some sort of a process. You want to break this kind of dynamic in relationship. So how do you do that? First, you want to recognize their tactics for being what they are and who they are, having that control over you. It's being mindful of how they can make you feel inferior. Understanding what they're doing in the moment can be difficult. But when you start doubting yourself, that's when you know they're employing those tactics. So you want to understand that it's not your fault, number one. And number two, that's their attempt to make you feel worthless, to make you feel like you have no self-worth. Second, stand clear and have firm boundaries. Narcissists hate boundaries because it limits their control. They may try to push back. They may try to stay consistent with what they're doing and enforcing those boundaries because that's all they have. And once you take their power away, the wall goes away. Lastly, you need to surround yourself with people who can support and advocate for your reality. The more you're grounded in who you are as a healthy support, then you make yourself less susceptible of being manipulated. So what I do is that I try to maintain my own control. And I talked a little bit about this also in other videos about reverse baiting, because the narcissist is going to try to bait you with their words to twist that reality, to have that control. But when you do not allow their words to have effect on you and you remain calm and consistent, then easily you are chinking a piece by piece of their armor. So you got to remember that a narcissist's need for control and superiority is endless, but you can stop it. The reality is that too, they won't stop unless you take away the fuel that keeps them going. So your compliance and self-doubt is something that they prey on. So it's like what my therapist told me is that a narcissist or an abuser will never have power unless you give it to them. And that's your integrity. That's your character. That's what you stand for. It's your truth. It's your story. It's your voice. And that's what makes all the difference in this relationship, because when you start reclaiming that, you start taking your life back, and it is possible. And you may need to do things in your life by continual setting of boundaries, or even acts of having no contact and not not engaging. And you got to know too that that's okay, because I know for me, when I grew up with my narcissistic parents and found myself in other narcissistic relationships, my first warning was, well, wow, Branon, you can't do that. You can't have a boundary to this person. You can't say these kind of things, because it went against the rules. And when the rules are present of what not to do in a relationship, then I don't want to disobey, because I'm going to be in consequence of that relationship. That person's not going to shower me with their love anymore. That parent's not going to give me that validation that I need anymore. So I want to play by the rules. But the problem is that when we've done that all of our lives, and that seeps into other relationships that we have, we at a certain point become unfamiliar to what's really happening, because we're so numb to that kind of process, because again, we're under the power of that narcissist, and that power is only as strong as the control that they have over you, like I had said earlier. So I don't want to give my power away to a narcissist or to a relationship in which they're going to just feed from that. That's going to become their fuel. It's going to become their ammunition to have right back over me. So the things that I've done in my life to break away from those kind of cycles of relationships is that I had to establish one thing, that I am a person apart from their control. And that's real hard to do. Again, it's like telling the narcissist no. And I know it's easy for me saying it now versus what you're hearing. And when you're stuck in that situation and those conversations, it's very difficult. But what I've learned is that if I can set myself apart and give myself permission to be okay with the person who I am, that's power. That actually is taking power away from the narcissist. And because let me just ask you, have you had those kind of moments where at first you thought, oh, wow, that's freeing. That's freedom right there. But then it goes away quickly, because then you think it's that cloud, that dark cloud that's over you comes back and says, no, you can't do this. And then we kind of set back into that condition, right? What the narcissist had taught us long ago of how we need to behave and how we need to obey them, right? And then quickly that freedom goes away, and then you're like, well, I can't do that. It felt good for that moment, but man, if only I can wish, like this far off fantasy fairy tale, if I could just do this in life and just be away from this person. Let me just tell you, that fairy tale dreamland is not far off from you. It actually is closer to what you think. That's probably the reason why you keep dreaming it, because the truth is you can get away. You have to break that cycle, and it's hard. I know it's hard because I've undergone it for years and decades. In fact, it's gone so deep with me that it kept me from dealing with my own abuse. It kept me burying my own pain, because in the eyes of my narcissist, they silenced me and didn't want me to talk about my pain. But once I began to look at my own pain and to voice that, yes, this happened to me, a little glimmer of freedom happened over here. When I began to identify that this was not my fault, this is from the abuse of my abuser, another glimmer of light happened over here. And then once I started piecing everything together, I found that I had an illumination of truth. And that illumination of truth is what gave me power to say, you know what? I am important. You know what? I am my own person apart from this narcissist, apart from this abuser. And I can take my life back, because why? I matter. They don't. And that right there is the power that you can have too. It's the power that I had discovered that I didn't know I had it within myself. But once I began to understand that their power, the narcissist control and power ends when I say so, then no longer do they have that power over me. And it's a continual process of even like the relationships that I still have today with my parents. There are still times that I have to maintain my boundaries. And for a time, maybe I know I don't need to engage, and that's okay. And it's like, now forgive me, maybe I'm going off topic a little bit, but it's like feeling the need of going over to your parents' house or the narcissist, whoever it is in your family or relational system. It's like that fear that happens every twice a year. What is it? It's Christmas or Easter or a birthday. Three things. These major holidays, right? In which we fear, oh man, I don't want to go over to that person's house because this is what's going to happen. I don't want to face that personality because that's going to occur. And you know what? That's okay. You're actually giving yourself boundaries when you say those things, but those boundaries sometimes can become crippling when you allow that wall to fall on top of you, of that you feel like that little kid again, where I can't move because this person's there. Well, that's okay. But it's learning how to be okay with saying, no, I'm not going to, like it is in the relationships, I'm not going to allow this control over me, just like I'm also not going to allow myself to feel compelled to go visit them on a major holiday. If I say no, I mean no. If I don't want to face that, that's okay. But then the other question is, but wait, Branon, but does that mean that you don't love them anymore and you don't express the love? And let me just tell you, that's not love. That's manipulation. Whenever you feel those things, is because somebody told you way back in your life, way back over here, decades and years ago, to say that, well, if you love Uncle Johnny or if you love your mother, you'll do these things, right? It's so dangerous and so damaging how that affects you from years and years and years and years to come. So here you are, 20, 30 something, 40, 50 something, 60 something, where you're like, man, I can't do it because if I don't engage in that relationship anymore, they may think I no longer love them. Man, that's such an easy trap to fall into. But you see, that's the control though. That's the control of that superiority, of that abuser, of that narcissist. And that's why they want to have it over you. But let me just tell you, when you take these steps, when you take the steps of what I had already introduced in this video, by having boundaries, by giving yourself permission to reclaim yourself, it is freeing. And if you can just do step by step, baby steps, you'll realize soon enough that you're walking out of that unhealthy relationship. And then you want to be careful for the next relationships that you step into. That now that you've identified what's been happening over here and way back there, you want to pull that to the center and let that actually be a warning sign of what to stay away from. In the meantime, you're healing. In the meantime, you're taking steps forward. So let me just say that as you're healing from narcissistic control and superiority and that abuse, you don't want to stay there. You want to continue to keep walking forward in freedom, because when you start staying back and looking too long at what happened years and years ago, because I did say you want to embrace, I did say that earlier, that you want to embrace what's happened to you. You want to deal with the traumatic past in order to move forward, and that's true. But if you stay in the past, then you'll notice that it's no different from where you were living before. So you want to learn to move yourself forward. So I hope this helps. Thank you so much for joining me here on Your Story Matters. And I ask you, would you please not only subscribe, but drop a comment and let me know, do you like this content? Would you like me to make more? Can you also share this with a friend? Because the more that you share and like, you're helping our algorithm. So that way these shows get out to more people, because there's more people that need to heal and more people that need to hear from you. Because when you share and when you like, you're letting them know that not only your story matters, but you're letting them know their story matters too. Thanks again for joining me here. I'm Branon Dempsey. See you back here next time. Remember, your story matters. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today on Your Story Matter podcast with Branon Dempsey. Please kindly rate and comment on today's podcast. This has been a Your Story Matters digital production. Copyright 2024. Hope you were inspired from today's episode as you grow in your recovery from trauma, because your story matters.